The exhibit is entitled Prom, subtitle, Where Did You Go to High School? It's in the Central Library's Great Hall, and the title comes from the title of St. Louis's Prom magazine. From 1947 to 1972, it chronicled the activities, the sports, dances, the opinions of St. Louis high schoolers with a lot of photos. And over the years, the library has been able to obtain almost every issue. Important documents of styles and trends from very different decades.
So we built an exhibit around it, around high school and teen years, the 40s through the 70s. So of all the thousands and thousands of photographs that Prom published between the 40s and the 70s, we had to choose somewhere around 300 for this exhibit. So that took a lot of pain to decide which ones to choose.
The photos were of school dances and activities, sporting events, and every school had a student reporter. This was all the idea of a man named Julian Miller. He wasn't merely serving students, he was building an audience of readers for advertisers. This was not a business built on 10 cents an issue.
Miller, who started publishing it, realized that teens were a big market right after the war. They were an exploding market.
It was in one sense the dawn of a new era, the teenager, although the word itself was not all that new. Search back in St. Louis newspapers, you will find it in the 20s and 30s, but almost always being used in ads for clothing. And these are not directed at teens, but at their parents, often parents with money. This ad mentions tea dances and supper parties. It's not about teenage culture, it's just an age group. But in the 1940s, teenagers were in the news in a very different way. And when the war was over, in peacetime and prosperity, the world, the country, was a very different place. And with newfound independence, teenagers begin to show up not just in ads, but in articles and commentaries about teenage problems and attitudes, and about crime and teenage drinking and heavy petting. And they were on TV and in the movies. They had their own music, their own fashions. Many had money to spend. And more were finishing high school, more were going to college. This 1960 article was about teenage charge accounts. Julian Miller's Prom magazine had plenty of ads to sell.
Clothes, records, even automobiles were targeted at them, and so the advertisements paid for the magazine and made it possible. And so that was a new thing, literally, in the 1940s, and the magazine traces its beginning and how it went through the 70s.
Another thing Miller did was include everybody, even in the days of segregation and then after. Black or predominantly black high schools like Sumner were covered. When former TV anchor Julius Hunter was at Sumner, he was Prom's reporter.
The concept behind the magazine, behind Prom magazine, was all St. Louis high schools. So Miller was forward-looking in that way, and it makes it a more valuable record of St. Louis itself because it really looks at everyone.
Do you see a lot of changes in terms of the content that was in the magazine from, say, 1950 to 1965?
Quite a bit, yes, and then on to the 70s. It started out with almost stereotypical of the performances of Oklahoma and the sock hops and the enormous cotillions and dances.
And malt chops. I saw one article, Where Do You Hang Out?
Yes, and
right?
All the kids on the floor in bobby socks listening to the records, all of those things went on. As it moved on, the world really was changing, and you could see it happening around, and up until the 70s, when students were having a lot of questions and there were a lot of concerns, you can see that reflected in the magazine.
Nothing perhaps says that more dramatically than the March 1970 cover. It was introducing a multi-page, multi-part series on drugs, much of it handouts from the government's anti-drug campaign, but also with student comments. And yet in the final years, Prom was still true to its roots, with pictures of athletes and cheerleaders, dances, and student councils. Prom magazines were printed on cheap paper, and they are often today in very fragile condition. But the library has digitized every page of every issue it has, as well as a vast collection of original photographs. They can be found on the library's website. But the exhibit in the library's Great Hall is a good place to start. and offers so much more context to this story. There are the prom tuxes and dresses from different eras, from the demure to the daring, a list of the most popular records from different eras, and maps of every high school that is or was. Prom, where did you go to high school? It will be here for the rest of the year. For Living St. Louis, I'm Jim Kircher.